us for this NACDA webinar. My name is Dana Leroy. I'm the Communications Manager for NACDA, and from the National Office staff, we hope that you, your families, and your own staff are all doing well and staying safe. Today's session is called Own a Moment in Time, a roadmap for athletics departments during unprecedented times. We are fortunate to have Dan Migala as our presenter. Dan has a great history with us here at NACDA and NACMA. He's a co-founder and partner of Forefront, a company focused on driving both traditional and non-traditional revenue growth in the sports and entertainment industries. Dan has worked for or advised virtually every level of sports franchises on issues related to marketing, non-traditional revenue generation, sponsorship, technology, ticket sales, and using analytics to drive revenue growth. Before we get started, for today's live attendees, if you have a question during the webinar, you may send it through the questions drop-down window on the webinar dashboard. We will address your questions periodically throughout the presentation. As a reminder, a recording of this webinar will be made available to all NACDA and affiliates members via the NACDA Daily Review. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dan.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much, Dana. Thank you, Bob and Chris and the larger NACDA family for this opportunity. If I can, I wanted to start out with a broad thank you. Thank you to all of the collegiate administrators that are choosing to spend this hour with us. So grateful to be part of the collegiate community more than ever before. And if I can, maybe a little backstory on how this session came to be. And go way back and give gratitude to two people in particular. In the mid-90s, I was a college student at the University of Missouri, and I met a man named Roger Valdesari, who many of you in college athletics will know. Roger is the longtime SID at Notre Dame at the time, a NACMA Hall of Famer and one of the 100 most influential people in college football. When I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, he recommended that I come to NACDA, and I came to NACDA in Reno, 1997. He may have helped me out with a badge to get into, that trip, and I was just so forever grateful to be welcomed there. And when I got there, my very first NACDA, my very first college marketing meeting, I stood there, kind of pretending to be busy, like we do sometimes, when we don't know a lot of people around. And a gentleman by the name of Daryl Lanus, who was then the marketing director at Baylor Athletics, just came up to me, literally put his arm around me and said, "Hey, I'm Daryl. This is your first NACDA." And we went to a session, and Daryl's become a tremendous friend. And I was reflecting on that, and those were some scary moments, right, early in your career when you're trying to figure out what you want to do. Going to an environment, not knowing a lot of people, but those were made better for me personally because of the college community, and in particular because of NACDA. Roger actually helped me get my first job, and when I went to thank him, he said, "Don't thank me. When you're in a position down the road to give back, please do." So, a big part of Roger's and Daryl's heart inspired me to reach out to Bob, Chris, Dana in this moment to give back to all of you. So today's really all about the college community, the spirit of NACDA, and a lot of the things that we're true to at Forefront, where we have access to teams and leagues around the world to maybe aggregate some of those learnings of what we're seeing, what we've learned from past unprecedented times, and how we can help translate, educate, inspire, and collaborate, and frankly, have a little fun. So before we get into it, I told Dana in the prep for this, years later, Roger got into the NACMA Hall of Fame, and I got to give his acceptance speech, and I was really nervous, and I had a speeching coach that helped me prepare for it. And he said, when in doubt, just imagine all the attendees in their underwear. So now that you guys are working from home, I hope there's a couple people that are really going COVID-19 business casual today, and a shout out to you for the inspiration. So with that, want to dive into our overview. So if you guys are familiar with us, I know there's a lot of friends on the line. I think we're just tremendous fans of the business of college athletics. We work with schools of all levels and take great pride in the spirit of innovation. We've also just got a passionate group of people across our offices that frankly really are committed to making sure that college athletics continues to succeed in this moment in time. A little bit about what we do, and I think this will be our approach. I think the biggest thing that you need to know about us is we're revenue generators that use technology. So we're very adept at the use of analytics and digital media to drive revenue, as well as kind of the heartbeat, the innovative strategies that I think you guys are going to see today that we hope that you can take to your own organizations in this moment in time. This is just a few of who we work for in current moments. So we've got great perspective at the NCAA level, our conference partners, our teams, and even bowl games as well. So we're trying to basically translate to you all in the best way possible. So what I want everybody to do a little bit as an exercise, if we were running this at a NACDA session or right before everything happened, our team was leading some sessions for the Big Ten in Indianapolis. I just want you to visualize your home opener for a second. And in a quiet moment with yourself or your staff, write down in this moment in time what your biggest hope is for your home opener. How do you visualize it being better than ever? And what are those variables that you can start to think about a roadmap? And we're going to come back to this. So it's a great exercise that we look to do from a hope standpoint of what is your single biggest hope as an individual, and then as a department, when you look ahead, what is that biggest hope that you have? So that's your first homework assignment. I'm a home teacher to a 5 and a 3-year-old right now. So hopefully we'll come back to that homework assignment shortly. The way that we're going to outline today is really break this down into 4 downs, just like you would in a football game, and break it down. And what we thought that was a really good mindset for you all is, we know spring practice is traditionally, part of your calendar. And what we wanted to think about for the first phase of today is to imagine this is your business, your marketing, your administrative, external relations. This is your spring practice. It's going to be a little bit different this year. And what are the keys that you need as you think about your plan for this upcoming season to be able to do? What I wanted to share with you also too on these headwinds, it's really about communication. Let's admit, you're not next to your coworkers. I've heard some funny stories about teaching some ADs Zoom for the first time and going through the maneuvering of adjusting to that world. Focus. Frankly, where do you focus your time? In a traditional college world, you guys are juggling a lot of spring events. And, this is going to be a little bit different this year. And there's a wonderful opportunity to create some alignment coming out of your business spring practice and put a focus. We're going to spend some time on your playbook and thinking about, the revenue challenges and also the revenue opportunities that you have. And then we love this analogy, make every down count from a marketing and business perspective, and how you can start to build your practice, your strategy, and really your offensive plan to be able to do that. So I think those are some great broad tenets, if we're your coach, of things to start to think about. Now, internally, this was interesting. I think in that same spirit of giving, translating, when everything started to trend in the way that it did for sports right around March 11th, me personally, in just that desire that Roger and Daryl really taught me, how can we help? I immediately got on the phone and I talked to friends and colleagues that had worked at other unprecedented moments in sports, would have talked to the C-level leadership from the Oakland A's during the earthquake series of the late 80s. A lot of 9/11 conversations. Katrina. We work with the New Zealand Rugby, how they handled the earthquake from a few years ago, and even some descendants of Major League Baseball C-level executives from World War II, and basically asked them for advice internally. What would they do differently? What were the lessons that they learned? And this is basically the 5 things that all of them universally said in alignment. So imagine me as your coach writing this on a chalkboard at a spring practice. Communication is key, and understanding everything that's going on. This line of brute force, and I think the context there is, don't sugarcoat things with your staff. Don't sugarcoat things with your student athletes. Be brutally honest right now, and people really appreciate that. And I think that was some lessons of controlling what you can control, which we'll get to in a second. That transparency becomes really key. A lot of us, operate from a mindset of kind of deliver bad news early. You want to be as transparent as possible, especially with this distance from the office and everything. How do you get that communication out? And then, frankly, control what you can control. I know a lot of you guys are, it's a moving target for scheduling. And what are the elements that are in your control that you can right now? Keep your focus there, and be ready. And then obviously we're all human beings, right? So I think the spirit of compassion is really key. And I think these are wonderful things to share when you have some meetings of how do we reinvent our department a little bit in this moment in time around these 5 elements, and learning from, frankly, the shared experience of your colleges or your colleagues from other sports around the world when they've been through other situations. And then individually, I would tell you all, talking to all of those people, a lot of them would have been in their first job, and then they evolved to a higher position, how they navigated that situation. And probably the number one thing on an individual level coming out of this moment in time is, traditionally, I think we all live in a fairly routine world. And I love this analogy. A lot of you guys know Stedman Graham, who works with a lot of athletic departments on identity. And in a traditional world, Stedman really teaches us that we live in a fixed mindset. We wake up on a Monday morning, we feed our kids the same kind of breakfast, we drive the same way to work, we've got the same staff meeting, we dust off last year's marketing plan and update it. And that's really a fixed mindset that sometimes, if we're being honest with ourselves, we can be a little bit robotic in the things that we do. And I think what Stedman has really taught me, and I think is an incredible opportunity for everybody in college athletics right now, individually, how do you embrace a growth mindset? How do you start to change your habits of what can we do with this moment in time? How do we move forward? How do we embrace new audiences? And how do we have a greater impact than ever before? And I think it's a tremendous thing to think about. We had a running joke on our team of in a traditional world, you might drive a different way to work just to free up that creativity. So maybe you walk down your stairs a different way right now, with some pun intended there, to be able to mix it up. But I think if you can do those 2 things as a department, manage with that communication, brute force, transparency, control what you can control, and have some compassion for your teammates, and then you all individually embrace a growth mindset starting today, there's a wonderful open road for you. So that is the end of the, call it the first down. And what I wanted to do right now is turn it back over to Dana for any questions that might have come up that we can answer in real time, especially with that focus, frankly, around your internal mindsets before we start to transfer to the external.
Thanks, Dan. Just a reminder to attendees, if some of you joined late, there is a question drop-down panel in the webinar platform, so you can use that to type questions in real time. Dan, if we could just continue on with your last thought about the growth mindset, can you elaborate on maybe some specific ideas that you have or you've seen for an athletics department to embrace the growth mindset and carry that forward? And is that different based on the size of the institution?
No, and I can tell you on the size of the institution, what's interesting is we work with schools at all levels, D3, D1, and everybody in between. I can tell you in a traditional world, a lot of times the D3 schools will say, well, the D1s have resources that we don't. And then the D1 schools will say to the D3 schools, you guys can be more nimble. So I think regardless what size institution you are, being nimble, adaptable, and looking at growth strategies now more than ever is incredibly important. And then what I would think about if you guys are thinking about a Zoom session or a brainstorm session with your own team is think about right now, what is one thing that really keeps you up at night? And then what is one thing that gets you up in the morning from an external perspective? And then embrace a growth mindset, frankly, with some of the lessons that we're going to see of what could we do and do something that's never been done before, really embracing that growth mindset versus, maybe in the past, I've been a part of, teams and organizations, even working in-house, where sometimes, oh yeah, we don't want to disrupt that program. That's the way we've always done it. And I think part of embracing that growth mindset is moving before with that. So before we move to the second down, any other questions for the first down? And then we'll pause in between each of these sessions, and then certainly at the end have time for a larger Q&A as well. So team, if you can indulge me, as much as you can, try in the second down to embrace just the normal world. We're running a session, and you're really challenged with maybe embracing a period of time where you're tasked with doing something that's never been done before. I can tell you personally, it's my favorite thing to work on. And I think for each of you, I want you all to feel this of what's around the corner in your career. And I want to walk you through how we traditionally manage this process. When you're looking to come up with that breakthrough idea, and you're looking to collate and create something that's never been done before, how you can take what we've learned from designing these and applying it to this unique moment in time. So this visual that you see, it's a little old, but he's our alter ego in every innovation strategy that we've done of doing something that's never been done before. Some of you sports historians will recognize this gentleman is Roger Bannister, who was the first person that ever broke the 4-minute mile. And I want you to think about that. With what you're tasked ahead, how are you going to do something that's never been done before for your department, for your conference, for your fans, for your alumni, for your student athletes? And I think if we can kind of borrow the heart, mind, and plan of Roger Bannister, you guys are going to be crossing the finish line in under 4-minute miles, come when we get around the corner here. So what we typically like to look at is something that Roger really taught us. And it's this vision of a disciplined sprint. And what a disciplined sprint means is you are going to move so incredibly fast. I think one of my favorite lines that I've learned is the last 2 days felt like a really long year. I think as we go through this process, the concept of time is on our side, but we're also fighting against it. And the sooner that you can commit and get almost like, I'm sure there's a lot of marathon runners out there, a disciplined sprint, and start to think about what moments What ideas do we want to create and own in that headline of doing something that's never been done before? I think you will look back and you will run a more consistent mile time. You're going to be able to get ahead of the curve. And we want you to almost fill in this goal. Start to almost have a marathon training plan of the little things that you can do on a daily basis that create those big wins. These are some examples that we thought were really relevant to things that our teams worked on using that discipline sprint. And I really want these as maybe some visual inspirations, frankly, for all of you, the big revenue, the other schools that are looking to get creative. These are wonderful examples of what has happened and our team has worked on. If you look at the top left, it's something that we actually just worked on International Women's Day, where we did a analytics-driven strategy for a cricket match in Australia around women and different behaviors. And we set the record for the largest women's sporting event of this century with 86,000 attendees. It was an incredible achievement of kind of making the impossible possible. And I think for you all with women's sports, really embracing building on this momentum, that's a wonderful case study and an inspiration of the spirit of community, bringing people together. You'll see in the middle, that was from minor league baseball. In Charleston, South Carolina, there was an all-star game. They were about 60 days out. They were really struggling with the ticket sales, and they needed an idea that could really enhance the promotion of it. So since it was in Charleston, we looked at the opportunity, since there's an aircraft carrier, to do something that was never been done before. And we did the home run derby aboard an aircraft carrier. I'm not sure if he's on the call, but somewhere in the audience is Eric Nichols from South Carolina, who made the trip as well. But what it allowed us to do was to create an event on around the event. And as a result of that, tremendous media exposure, an incredible community asset. And the result of it is we sold out an event that 60 days out, we didn't think we could. Those are those things that you really want to start thinking about. You guys are very familiar, hopefully, with the Makers Wanted Bahamas Bowl and really bringing that to life. The Indy 500, they had never sold out before. In their 100th, that was their goal, right? So in their 100-year history, they had never sold that out. So when you reach that ambition in that discipline sprint, you have that ability to do it. The last one that I think is a great inspiration for you all, in the bottom left, this is something that a minor league hockey team, the Milwaukee Admirals, did really for a community-based promotion campaign. They used local heroes, first responders, as a way of promoting them with their ads, tied it back to a hashtag in a community-focused way, and got tremendous exposure. So when we think about all those community heroes, you know, how you can use your media in a different way and celebrate your community, and create these campaigns where you can almost nominate a local hero, we think that's a tremendous inspiration. And then also a good reminder, have some fun with your hashtags, because it gets people socially engaged with your audience. So trying to embrace this traditional world, this is how we build an innovation strategy. So we talked about your department mindset. We also talked about your individual mindset. As you embrace this area of innovation and just the understanding that you're going to do something that's never been done before, this is the framework. This is the offensive game plan that you want to think about. Spend some time in a post-crisis world. What does your athletic department stand for your fans, for your alumni? I want you to think about what is a risk that you're going to take that you've never done before in the immediate future. As you navigate towards that home opener, what's something that you can do that you've never done before? And here's what I would tell you. And I could share this with any of your athletic directors, your conference commissioners. We've done this with team owners. as well in the NFL, NBA. If you do your job on those first two steps, people should feel a little uncomfortable, and that's a good thing. And that's why it's the third element of what you're going to go through. And then, frankly, I think if you talk to those people that we were fortunate enough to talk to from those past crises, you guys have a unique moment to own a moment in time for your fans, your alumni, your student athletes, your community in a way that you haven't. So when you think about another homework assignment, really spend some time when we all come up for air and we exhale on this. What does your athletic department stand for in a new world? What do you want it to? There is no playbook for this, so you have the opportunity to script the playbook. And then what is a risk that you can do to really reach for the stars and do that in a way that you've never done? And I think you'll find yourself on your home opener, standing on the sidelines, looking around, feeling incredible personal as well as professional pride, knowing that you owned that moment in time. So part of that growth mindset, and I think what Dana was asking of embracing this, here's how we all are. We all have different parts of our brain that we lean more towards. I definitely lean right. I'm imaginative, artistic, creative, and then we've got different members of our team that are very logic, factual, linear, focused. What I would tell you is, when you embrace an innovation mindset and everything that's ahead for you all, the more that you can balance out left and right brain thinking, the more successful you're going to be. So think about, if you personally lean more way, find a tag team partner that balances it out, and vice versa, to be able to embrace this new mindset. So with that, I think we're right at halftime. I'll turn it back over to Dana for any questions, and then we're going to get into our offensive coordinator strategy and how we're going to attack and give you a framework for your risk focused plan moving forward.
Great. So Dan, I have one question that came through. Can you talk a little bit more about what filters or what do you personally use to decide if the next sprint or the next cool idea is actually worth going down that path?
Yeah, great question. One of the things that we've learned, innovation to us is all about selection. It's once you come up with that idea, having a process in place to have those checkpoints to know that this is the right one to go all in on. And I think part of that is, what are you trying to accomplish? What are the objectives? And almost having a litmus test to be able to challenge it. The other thing that I would really suggest is to have people that can help refine and advance, that plan, to be able to help kind of narrow the focus and get it a little bit better. I think we're going to be in a more collaborative space where maybe some of those department divisions are broken down, where it's less, this is a ticketing initiative, or this is a marketing initiative, or a stadium ops initiative. This is a department initiative. And I think that's incredibly helpful to be able to do it. One of the things that we've created for NFL teams in brainstorming, and this might be incredibly effective for all of you right now, when you think about, working from home and working remotely, is they've created collaboration quarterbacks with each of their different internal departments as a way of refining and advancing ideas. So a really good example of that, we work with the Chicago Bears. They celebrated their 100th anniversary, and they had their collaboration quarterbacks that were set up cross-departmentally that were sharing goals and objectives for these innovation ideas. And one of their ideas was to present game balls to local high schools coming out of the Bears games, to give to that team. And then building on that, they started to create these gold balls for the 100th anniversary. Building on that, their community outreach, actually they held a practice at a local high school to build on it. So it started to plus up and refine these different goals and objectives. And by the way, that's an NFL team holding a practice at a local high school as a way of embracing the community. So you think about the values of taking a risk, doing something you've never done before, and own a moment in time. I think that's a wonderful example, but it requires that selection to say, this is the one that we want to go all in on. And ultimately, let's then collaborate with all our different departments where it's an organizational innovation versus just a single department.
Great. I have another question that's a little bit more tailored to a specific area, but do you have any suggestions for season ticket sales renewals and pricing in general from now through the June-July timeframe, and any tips for administrators how they can remain compassionate for these households that may have lost jobs or a percentage of their income through all of this?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and we might touch on it a little bit with the offensive game plan. The one case study that we've really looked to, and be happy to dig this up and share that even with you, Dana, as well. During the recession, I'm going to get my dates wrong, but 2007, 2008, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they have probably one of the more blue collar season ticket holder bases in the NFL. And I think they lost a lot of their season tickets overnight, and it was really due to cost. So they got creative with it, and they created a monthly payment plan for season tickets. So they changed the way that they marketed it based on consumer demand. Their analogy was the cable bill. If you got your cable bill and it was $1,500 for the year versus $110 a month or whatever we pay, that was their psychology. So they flipped it. I believe they also secured a sponsor, for it as well, as an example. So they made it a little bit more cost effective, to be able to do. And I think those things, if you think more like a fan, and I think that's a good example of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset as well. But we can happily have our team put together some other case studies or historicals specific to that question as well.
Great,
All
thank
right.
you.
Well, we'll go into the second half here, or third down, and I think this is a good place to be, right? So we've just talked about internally, how do you evolve in this moment in time, and then also what are some lessons of just innovative strategies and kind of the aspiration. Your fans, your community, all really want their favorite college programs to be there for them in a different way and do something they've never been done before. So how do you start to bring that to a new plan? In a traditional world, we would always talk about ourselves as offensive coordinators. And a good offensive coordinator probably has his first 5 plays set, coming out. And what we wanted to do for you as part of your spring practice, create your offensive game plan. What are the 5 things tactically, learning from what we know, what we've learned, what you should be doing right now, and create a framework for it. So this is a tremendous slide, and you can have the ability to translate it for your own organization, your own athletic department, your own conference. But we think this is a tremendous GPS for all of you. Number 1, right now, how do you unite your community and inspire philanthropy? We're going to walk through some ideas here. Number 2, how do you create smiles? Pretty simple, right? We want to remove fear. Sports is a tremendous part of our lives, inspiration. And I think these surprise and delight experiences that you can do, they don't have to cost a lot. They don't even really have to cost anything, but creating a focus for that, and that is an aspiration. I can tell you the digital world when you can start to create some revenue opportunities that didn't exist, call it on March 10th for your organization, your fans, your alums, and your potential fans are living off their devices. I'm raising my hands, guilty as charged, as we sit at home more than ever before. And I think there's some tremendous pivots that you can start to do to capitalize on it. And then how do you start to embrace this new media and technology, to connect with your fans in a personal way? They have such a personal connection with your schools and your conferences that you have that ability to do it. And I think if you do all of this, you're naturally going to be preparing for the return in a unique way. And the minute you can put a flag on the ground, start calling that first play, you're going to be so much more ahead of the game in your discipline sprint. So here's a couple examples. And the way we tried to outline this is really simple, is give you guys some inspiration and allow you to translate this to your own organizations in the best way possible. So number one, inspire communities, inspire philanthropy. There's some examples, of it. To the season ticket holder question, MLS is putting the faces of their season ticket holders on their jersey as a way to encourage new renewals. Is there something that you have the ability to do that your fans are taking the field with you, and tie it back to uniting your community, tying it with a local charity, or what it could be? All these are other examples, that have the ability to do it. So I think number one, how are you uniting your community? Also, how do you define your community? Fans, alumni, student athletes, potential fans. Really think about that, and then start to kind of build these inspirations. And I can imagine like this MLS example, that was probably something to the stand for something, take a risk, make yourself uncomfortable. That's doing something that's never been done before. How do we do that with our jersey partner? How do we manufacture that? Are we okay doing this? All those questions were asked, but they ended up doing it. And there's a deeper connection that their season ticket holders feel with those clubs as a result. Create smiles, remove fear. This one to the right is from a minor league hockey team, and it's just fun. They created a T-shirt called Puck the Virus that they were selling to their fans. They were given the proceeds to help their team employees. Anything that you can do to help people smile, anything that you've got, in terms of extra equipment, things that you can think about, giveaways, virtual garage sales. We've, heard some teams kind of thinking about doing. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to be part of your team's family life, in a way. And then how do you create smiles? And I think especially for the youth, and the parents, of being there for them, maybe in a different way than you never have before. Number three, create valuable digital inventory. I had a conversation with an NFL team this morning, and I was asking them to look at their content data and their video data year over year from March of 2019 to March of 2020. They had more than 11 times the viewership for content in the month of March in 2020 that they did. There is never going to be a better time for your institution to create any level of content, that you can create for them. We have also, with a lot of these NFL teams in particular, they have the challenge right now of doing make good inventory. So they are using basically this process that you see called a fan network, where all of the data from the people that they're able to collect, serving them with ads on any device that you have to activate and digitally target. We know we do a lot of this with schools, IMG College, and happy to kind of give this explanation. But I think it's just a really interesting time. If you're creating that content, capturing that data, how you can start to engage with your fans, because they're going to miss you. They're not coming to spring practice this year. They're not having the opportunity to come to other events. So if you can create this digital environment for them, and then also start to create some commerce in there, you can start to get ahead of some of your revenue goals. These are some other things that I think we're seeing, embracing new media and technology. So maybe think about some of the things that you were doing in a traditional world during this time, and then how do you use a growth mindset and translate that to a digital space. So virtual town halls with coaches, virtual autograph sessions, unique social chats with legends. We've talked to some schools about that, of doing that as a fundraiser, getting donors private experiences virtually with coaches. We had one, and I don't want to give away the team, but just in the spirit of collaboration and sharing that NACDA represents, of a cooking class with a coach while he's at home, virtually, to learn a secret recipe. Those kind of things, this moment in time gives you the ability to do that in a way you'll never get again. And it creates a lifeline with fans, and it transcends sports. I'm not sure if Garrett Classy from Nebraska is on. Really encourage you guys to look at what Nebraska launched already. They created Huskers Homework, where they're doing daily Nebraska-centric homework assignments through their website. And it's a really engaging way, frankly, for the Husker fans to teach their kids about Husker history and some of the lessons. And I think there's some really good inspiration that you all can take and apply it. And then obviously what we're all talking about here, how do we prepare for the return, right? And I think it's okay to be, have some fear. It's natural. And I think once we get past that in our mind and use that disciplined sprint, really think about that moment's going to be the greatest part of your career. And how do you take advantage and be part of that hero moment for so many people that need you guys to lead with heart and mind. These are some of the fun things that we've thought of. That in the upper right is from an NHL team where they had kids draw pictures for the player intros. I think that's an easy thing to start doing, for your local fans in your local school districts to start doing that. I think even, those messaging of what you can do to prepare for that moment when people are going to, want to be able to be there. I think if you do your job, people are going to have this feeling of FOMO that they need to be at that first game. We learned that with the cricket match. There was almost a feeling, if you had a young daughter and you did not take her to this event in this moment in time, years from now, you would regret it. And I think for you all with your communities and what you can represent, how you go about doing that, to bring it all together, that's definitely part of the return. So these are the 5 things. We're smart enough to know that your local fan base better than anybody. But what we wanted to do was give you a framework and a focus for your offensive plan. So before we take the field, we run that offense. I'll pause, Dana, for any questions as we merge from 3rd down to 4th down territory.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could expand just a little bit about the Nebraska initiative, as we're all, for the parents who are on the line and tuning in. Homeschooling our kids all across the country has been a huge topic these last couple of weeks. And so just kind of wondering how that Nebraska idea came to be, and any other details on that.
Yeah, no, great question. And I think this was a perfect example of an organizational collaboration versus a department initiative. In the case of the Huskers, it was really inspired by their creative and emerging media department. And then they worked internally with the football department, other student athletes, and they basically just launched it. It's a great creative If you guys just Google Husker homework, you can see what they're doing. It's very simple. It kind of takes that old Mead spiral notebook visual with a Husker brand with a daily assignment. They're very inclusive of a lot of the sports. So today it's who's Nebraska's men's gymnastics coach? Fill in the blank of Nebraska volleyball middle blocker, Callie blank. So then they have to go online and find and research those questions. And then there's geography, and it's really specific. I would encourage you guys, don't overthink it. I think in this environment, fast is better than perfect. And as a parent, looking for ways to occupy your time, and if you can align it with something that myself or my wife Kate are passionate about, even better.
Dan,
all right.
talked,
so,
go
sorry.
ahead, Dana. You talked a little bit about connecting, with the community and the potential to profile, youth sports and clubs and younger student athletes. Can you touch on just any potential compliance concerns that might arise if people explore that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. What we were thinking about there is, there's going to be a void. Our son was signed up to go to Denver University sports camp over his spring break. That got canceled, right? I know DU is still looking to engage with young students like that, right? And young youth sports. So is there a way to still connect with those people and work with those organizations, to be able to do that? And are there unique ways for you to help? Great point, Dana, to be aligned with your traditional compliance. But I think even finding ways and avenues to help, they're hurting too. There's a hole that's there for them. And as caretakers of the community, what is the best way to be, one, compliant, and then two, also a great neighbor in all you do. All right. Well, I'll advance. I don't know how I'm doing on my clock management with the hour, but to get to fourth down, we love this headline. Usually this time of year, we're talking about who's the Heisman Trophy favorite. A lot of the schools are, working on all of that. And we thought about it in the spirit of spring practice. From an external side, who's your Heisman Trophy favorite for your new strategy in this new era? We really believe data is. We have kind of a tenet that we use that your online behavior knows you better than you know yourself, and how you start to use that data in a really compelling way for your go-to-market storytelling now more than ever, with the amount of time people are spending on devices, really making data part of your strategy and how you can come out of it. So I had our analysts, pull a couple examples. I'm also a Chicago Cubs fan. So I love this quote: if the Cubs could have won a World Series by using data, I think it's a great inspiration for all of us as well. And thanks to Jed Hoyer from the Cubs for that quote. But I pulled two stats. For me, OU symbolizes Ohio University, where I went to grad school. I'm sure there's a lot of Bobcats alums on the call, but we were thinking about ways that they could start to prepare for the return of football in a unique way. And we started pulling data of people's online behavior that live within 50 miles of Athens, Ohio, what kind of music they're listening to right now on those devices. So we found it fascinating that 33% are listening to country music. And how do we maybe create a, country music, festival or something like that in and around that return, and use that as a behavioral strategy, to get people that maybe otherwise wouldn't come to book in advance to feel good and be part of something greater than a football game. University of South Carolina which is our very first digital client that we worked with many years ago. I thought this was interesting, starting to take a look at people's propensities. What causes are they sniffing around on Instagram, reading about? How do you align with maybe some cause-based initiatives to be able to drive some short-term donation, but then also align it with maybe some ticket plans? They are more likely to donate to religious causes. They're very faith-based. So your ability to tie in a message as well as some of these other learnings, I think these are those things as you go through this discipline sprint. Let data trigger some ideas, use that right brain, left brain as much as you can. In this example, these are two that we just traditionally work with as well. Navy football, we've worked with for a long time, and Baylor as well. These are two examples of some data sets, that we've been able to pivot on and tie it into an ROI, which I think is a great model for what you can be doing. So in the case of Navy, they had some content season with Navy football, which is very appropriate to what I was just telling you about your content strategy. People that are viewing that take that data set and actually then start, creating some proactive messaging, to be able to tie in a call to action. I can tell you, if you know the folks at Navy, their ROI on this is phenomenal. And it's just another variable of capitalizing on it. The Baylor example, if you look to the right, young alumni, and we learned this from South Carolina many years ago, was an underserved audience. And how do they sell football tickets, frankly, to alums that live within driving distance to come up on a Saturday? And what are they looking for? They want to buy a bundle of season tickets because they want to go with a friend. They want free parking. And then selfishly, Baylor wants to get them into the Bear Foundation early. So there's a special targeted offer for young alums to buy season tickets. So those are things that happen in a traditional world. And now in this new world, with such a magnifying glass of data, how do you be able to capitalize on that? So I'll pause there for a second before we get into the closing thoughts. Any questions on the use of data and the understanding of basically how to do that in this moment in time to pull your fans' online data when they're viewing stuff about you more than ever before?
Dan, what suggestions do you have for administrators to actually go out and find those types of helpful data?
It's a great question. There's a lot of data tracking services, that are out there to be able to do it. We do a lot of that for colleges and athletic departments as well. You want the ability to place a tracking pixel on your website so you can start to really kind of track your fans' behavior and where they go. There's also some broad search strategies that you can do. So if people are reading content about your school or university or athletic department, how you can start to, segment that. I think the big thing is, how do you make it actionable? And what are you looking to learn more about? Probably the thing that we think a lot about with data is what we call a fan DNA profile. And that stands for demographics, needs, and attitudes. Your online behavior really knows how you're feeling towards the world. It's not just a demographic profile with your age, household income. So really getting to the needs and attitudes that your fan base is feeling, I think, is really important in this moment in time.
And just to piggyback off that, how would you suggest capitalizing on this new technology and the use of data when maybe the AD or the senior staff is maybe a little bit old school and not as forward thinking or as open to it as some of the younger staff members?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think be happy to show some case studies and examples, that would be helpful. I think when you start to look at this as you're not going to have the traditional spring practice to survey and data collect your fans. You're not going to have those traditional touch points to be able to do it. And I think position this that our department is going to move at the speed of digital, this off season, and this is a digital parallel for us to learn more about our fans than ever before. The line that I like to use a lot too, whether it's a more veteran AD, commissioner, CEO, team owner, is frankly, there are probably more people that are viewing content about any college football team today that will attend all of your football games in the fall. And we want to be able to capture that information to make smart decisions. And I think usually that gets their visual attention, as well as the results of what schools like Navy and Baylor have generated as a result of that. All right, so we opened, and we've been through 4 downs, right? We opened with a home opener. And in a traditional world, we do this exercise, and this one's going to take on some new meaning today. We like to open with what is your biggest hope for your home opener? It's very aspirational. It's very ambitious. It's intended to be that way. And then in a traditional world, we like to end with what is your biggest fear for your home opener? I know for many of you, these are new feelings as it relates to it. In a traditional world, it would be, I don't get the buy-in from my AD to take risks. I don't get the support to have a new idea, or they don't realize how hard our non-conference schedule is in the open to be able to increase our media spend for those first couple games. So those are very normal things. And I would just ask you guys to be really honest with yourself. And what are those fears? And what are the things that you can control? And what can't you control in this moment? Hope and fear, we've learned in a traditional era, are wonderful motivators. And I think the juxtaposition of this is incredibly important. So another homework assignment for you and your athletic departments and your conferences and your organizations are to discuss, looking ahead to your return, what is your biggest hope, and now what is your biggest fear? So we're ending our spring practice, right? And we've embraced this discipline sprint. I love this quote to the right, kind of a historical coach from Auburn. Reminder for those of you that are feeling overwhelmed, Goliath was a 40-point favorite over David. There is no more passionate group of marketers that I know than the collegiate space. You guys can do this. And here's your roadmap on the discipline sprint: internal communication, that brutal honesty, the compassion, the transparency. How are you going to change habits moving forward? Embrace that innovation mindset. You have the amazing opportunity to re-script what your department stands for, what your programs stand for, and really personally own that moment in time. Feel free to recraft our offensive game plan on those first 5 plays, but have a plan, have an attack plan, understand that data is your teammate. And I do have a sense of humor here. I've been doing this on the 4 downs. I think you guys know me well enough that I'm a Missouri alum. And just like in college, football history, when Colorado got an extra 5th down against Mizzou in 1991, I think we all could use a 5th down right now, and take the bonus. So one of the things that our team talked about is you're not going to have that usual, coach's lunch, the camaraderie and everything. So we thought it'd be really fun. That my team is having some fun with me being a Mizzou alum. Just have a little bit of a happy hour tomorrow. Chance to let today breathe. celebrate the extra fifth down that we all need. And really, frankly, in that spirit of Roger, Daryl Lanus, all our teammates at NACMA for creating this forum and togetherness, just get a chance to socialize a little bit. So we hope you'll join us, and couldn't be more grateful and thankful for all of you for showing up today, and all the leadership that you're going to show in the days, weeks, and months to come. And I promise you this, if you follow the lessons from today, the lessons from your predecessors at other crises, apply this mindset, use all these tools and the time to your advantage, you're never going to have a finer moment in your career than when you have that home opener when it comes, and know that we're all giving you a standing ovation for being at the front line. So thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Dana for final thoughts and questions.
Thank you, Dan, so much. We're closing in on the end of our hour here, so I just want to again extend NACDA's appreciation to Dan for taking us through this roadmap today and guiding us through the beginning of these unprecedented times. And thank you all again for joining us today. As a reminder, the recording of this webinar will be made available to everybody who registered, as well as all NACDA and affiliates members via email and the NACDA Daily Review. Take care, everybody. Be well.